Hello, loves, and welcome back to my human experience, where the mind meets the body and the body meets the soul. This is season 2, where we will be meeting with influential people that have impactful stories. Geof is an author, inventor, and technology pioneer. Professionally, he is the founder of Maxim Point AI, which helps clients take full advantage of new technologies. As an author, Geof has several books in process. The book he is most focused on presently is a hybrid memoir. It entails stories from his journey of being a sexually abused Boy Scout to an internet pioneer. The stories are centered around 4 major influences in his life: food, music, the sexual abuse in the Boy Scouts, and internet-related technologies. Geof and 2 other authors have recently launched a new global book club centered on the mission of working to put an end to abuse of all kinds around the world. Geof, you grew up in the East Coast, is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, rural South Central Pennsylvania.
Awesome. And what got you into the Boy Scouts? What age were you?
Yeah, good question. Let's see. I was really young when I started. The Boy Scout experience in general on a global basis consists of different phases. That some starts very young. There's what's called tenderfoots, there's weeblos, and there's Boy Scouts, and then there's things quote unquote after Boy Scouts. Uh, I got started in the weeblos time frame, which is grade school level.
Mhm.
That's like I think maybe fourth or fifth grade. Uh, so that was around the age that I got introduced to the world of Boy Scouts through Weeblos. I was belonged to a Weeblo troop in my town. There's probably maybe 10 different troops in my town, but I joined one. Uh, and then I lived out quote in the suburbs of my town where I grew up in. Then my family moved into downtown area, and then in sixth grade I joined the Boy Scout troop, which was at another typically churches sponsor scouting activities, scouting troops. So my
Okay.
Weeblo troop was part of one church. My parents moved downtown, and we started being more active in a downtown church, and that's when I joined the Boy Scout troop that I became involved with.
Okay, got it. How many years were you in the Boy Scouts?
Yeah, I was in the Boy Scouts from, well, let's say I joined Weeblos when I was about 9 or 10, I'm going to say. And then I joined Boy Scouts when I was 11. And then I kind of disassociated around the time I was 16, 17. Yeah. So however many years that is, about 8 years all total, I guess.
That's a really long time to be in something
Yeah,
like that.
something. Yeah, some organized thing. Yeah. Yeah, 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 time flies fast and yeah, it's busy things.
Yeah. So tell me what that experience
So,
was like for you.
very positive in general. The different things, I met a lot of friends. When I was growing up, my family tended to move around very frequently. Like from the time I went to, let's say, kindergarten till the time I graduated from high school, I probably lived in, I must say, probably at least 8 different homes in the same town, but just
Hmm.
different neighborhoods. They were, for the most part, in different neighborhoods. Some were in the same neighborhood, but so I moved around a lot. But Scouts always gave me an opportunity to meet people that I didn't know and have friends and those kinds of things. And so, yeah, we did like at Weeblos, we did a lot of activities. We made races. There different. You'd handcraft different things, whether it was a car or a rocket or something, and then you compete with other scouts, and that was always fun. Yeah, there was yeah, a lot of fun in general.
I love that. I know Boy
Yeah.
Scouts was definitely a popular thing where I grew up too. I
Yeah.
did it.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
moved around a whole lot when I was young,
Yeah.
within the same town, which seems
Yeah.
silly, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big deal when you think
yeah.
about it. I mean, because it's these little micro cliques, if you will,
Mhm.
of people who've never lived. They've lived in the same house from, to maybe their grandparents even lived in the house, and then their parents took it over. And here they are, growing up as kids in the house, and but me, it was a different house, but which to me was exciting. I like moving around, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, scouts were definitely a tradition in my
Mhm.
town. Most kids were at least temporarily, whether short term or long term, were involved in. And kind of ran through. It was like Little League and Boy Scouts. Those were two things just
Mhm.
about everybody did. But
Yeah, definitely. So when, you know, as a kid, I think sometimes we don't fully understand things that are going on, right?
yeah,
When did you start to realize that something wasn't right?
the long, long, long time after I left, so to
Mhm.
speak. Uh, I mean, and that depends on your definition of quote unquote right.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, and so, yeah, I thought it was normal. I thought all the things that I was engaged in were perfectly normal. So to me as a kid, it wasn't, I didn't have a sense of, uh, trauma, so to speak, at that point in time. It's not like I woke up and said, "Oh my God, this is terrible." But
Mhm.
looking back, then as an adult and getting an understanding of different things, okay, well, of course, now I have a different perspective on it all.
Mhm.
But yeah, my own personal experience was that's how it shaped up.
Yeah. How did it start to unravel, in a way
Well,
for you?
yeah. Well, it started. I mean, I grew up in South Central Pennsylvania, went to college in New York, and after I graduated from college, I fairly soon thereafter moved to California, moved to the
Mhm.
West Coast at age 21, 22. So for all intents and purposes, it all became a past to me,
Mhm.
in that time frame. Uh, and didn't really think too much of things. I'd see things and hear things, and I think when the Catholic Church started having issues of child abuse and with altar boys and different things, and I'd read different. I said, well, that's interesting. Yeah, that's kind of how it rolls. Uh, but then I moved back to Pennsylvania in the right around the time of the Great Recession, 2008, 2009. I
Mhm.
think I moved back about 2010, and my mom's health was not doing well, and just a combination of things. I moved back to Pennsylvania, to the town. Specifically, I literally moved into the house that I was very active in scouting in. Uh, and there was about a year before that. I don't know if you recall the Jerry Sandusky, who was part of the Penn State University, the football program, had a big issue, and that was all in my backyard. Penn State,
Okay.
university, is very very close to the town I grew up in.
Mhm.
And I started hearing details of all of that, and then brought up a lot of the things that I had experienced. I saw a lot of parallels and a lot of similarities, and I'm thinking, yeah, okay, then getting an understanding of all of that. Uh, so, but you got a couple of dynamics and issues were at play at that point in time. One is my abuser was very, very close friends of my family. He was a very prominent businessman. We belonged to the same church. My dad and him belonged to the same Rotary Club, and were very active in the Chamber of Commerce and all things that were related to business in my town. My father and my abuser were both highly visible and active participants in it.
Mhm.
Uh, and then add to that, his mother and my mother were more or less best of friends.
Yeah.
They did a lot of activities together, spent a lot of time together, and all of those kinds of things. So that was part of, yeah, when I go back to my 20s and just kind of forget about all of this stuff, that was one of the big dynamics at play was I didn't want to say or anything, do anything that would embarrass either one of my parents or they get them kind of upset about it. So I just kept quiet about it. Then the other issue was when I came out to California, I was uh, started raising a family. I had two daughters, and
Mhm.
as they were growing up, I never really, wanted to have them exposed to anything that maybe they wouldn't understand or anything. So those as I progressed in age, and then I moved back to Pennsylvania, and then just ironically enough, this whole Penn State and Jerry Dan Sandusky thing is going on, and I'm like thinking, man, this is not right. But the big, and so my dad had passed away before I moved back.
Mhm.
And my mom's health was not doing great, but she was, active and doing things, when I first moved back. And then she kind of went downhill for, yeah, over the course of years. But, during that time, I would see that my abuser was still as highly regarded, if not more, from when I left.
Mhm.
And which kind of struck me as I'm like, well, this is weird because I know a lot of my friends were victims like I were because we were in the same situation at the time and I could do the math on even if I wasn't physically present on who was doing what and all those kinds of things. And a lot of these compadres of mine, so to speak, they never left town. They might have gone off to college, came back, and they were a part of the fabric of the community. But nobody ever broke the code of silence, so to speak, which was like, hey, it's, what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. What happened to where most of my abuse took place was kind of the same code. Hey, what happened in Horse Valley is the name of the area. What happens in Horse Valley stays in Horse Valley. And so that surprised me, to be honest with you. I mean, it wasn't, I was like, okay, that math didn't add up for me in my mind.
Yeah.
Uh, and so all of that said, there was a time when my abuser was, I've opened up the paper, this back in, we had kind of papers, or maybe it was an online version or something. But there was the local paper was a thing when I was growing up, called the Public Opinion. And it was a publication that I was well aware of because for various reasons, my father was often in the newspaper for a lot of different business and non-business related kinds of things he did. So I knew the paper very well. It's the only paper in town. But uh, I saw in the paper that my abuser had been selected and voted by the borough of town council to be the citizen of the year.
Wow.
I was just like, what? How the fuck could that be?
Mhm.
Citizen of the year? I mean, what he did makes the Jerry Sandusky thing look like, I don't know. I don't want to diminish the victims of that situation or in that whole situation. Maybe it was worse than what it purported to be, but I would say if that was the situation that was going on in my Boy Scout troop with my abuser was far worse. No, I shouldn't say far worse, but it was just as bad, if not worse, in my
Mhm.
opinion, in
Mhm.
my mind. I was just like, wow, how could that be? That here's a guy that in my calculus and my maths had abused probably well over 50 different victims over the course of decades. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty weird. So I went down to and so then my mom's health was really on a downward spiral. And I went down to, and she had passed away. and I went down to the publisher of the newspaper, and I asked her. I was able to give her ear for a quick minute or two just by going down to the offices and asking to talk to her. I hadn't really known her prior to that time frame. But when I introduced myself and I told her who I was, and we sad to say, but what my last name was, she's, ooh, who my father was. All I got to do is say my dad's name. Everybody in town knew, recognized that name. Uh, and so while I had been gone for 30 some years, I walked back and it was like, in some ways, I hadn't really left at all because my name was still there, and my family's name. So I said, if my abuser, his name's CQ, if he died today, what would the headline be in the newspaper?
Mhm.
Would it be, oh, citizen of the year, man of the year, businessman of the year, outstanding citizen passed away? Or would it be one of the most prolific pedophiles in the history of at least my town, if not the state of Pennsylvania,
Wow.
passed away? She goes, "Whoa, what do you mean by that?" I said, well, that's the reality. The latter scenario is the reality. And she's
Mhm.
like, "Wow, how are you so sure about that?" I said, "Well, I'm one of the victims." And she's like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "Yeah, really." And so she processed it, and she said, "We've heard rumors and different people have mentioned things about it and different in passing and things, but we never really had any credible substantiation to the story." And I
Mhm.
said, well, okay. I said, here, I've got a credible story. Whether you believe me or not, okay, doesn't matter. But I'm going to throw that out there that what happened to me happened. I'm not making this up just for some kind of revenge or something against this
Yeah.
person. I said, this is reality. Like it or not, it's okay. And she goes, oh, okay. Well, she says we'd have to have some corroborating stories from other people to substantiate your claim, your version of the story before we could run any kind of story. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I get it. I understand. I get media and legalities and all those kinds of things. And so I said, yeah, I get it. Uh, I said, but why don't you dig a little deeper, see if you can find some people?
Mhm.
Okay. I said, in the meantime, I'll tell you my story. And so she connected me with one of the reporters, and that reporter and I went to hours and hours of conversation and reiterating what my experiences and different things I thought might have happened without divulging anybody else's name because I didn't want to, respecting the privacy of any of my buddies, so to speak, growing up. But, I said, this is me. I said, you can do the math out there and think who might else be involved in all of this or had been know some more about it than what's out there in the public right now.
Yeah.
So that took a process. And then at that same time, I went to the city council, the offices of the borough. It's called or the municipalities are called boroughs, and my town was the borough of Chambersburg. And I went to the borough manager and I said to him, I said, how wrong is it that the citizen of the year is arguably one of the most prolific pedophiles that ever existed in this town? He's like, what do you say? Same, kind of looked at the publisher the newspaper had done. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? I said, but he's a pedophile. Oh, how can you be so sure? I said, because I'm a victim. Oh, you
Mhm.
are? Oh, you sure? Oh, why? But that wasn't his words exactly, but in my mind, that's what I was processing. This human
Yeah.
being on the other side of this desk saying to me, oh, are you sure? Well, maybe you got your story wrong or something. Because he knew the implications of what the whole situation is. And his first defense was, oh, I'm not. Oh, you sure, Jeff? Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sure. Uh, so he said, well, we can't do anything about it right now. I'm like, okay. Uh, and that was kind of a weird response to me. But
Yeah.
he said, okay. I said, let me tell you some more facts and figures from my perspective. quote unquote, on the record so that you know how I feel on this topic. What you want to do with it from here, up to you, you know. And so they took it to town council and they voted not to do anything about it. They thought that the implications of bringing this all up with just on my word alone were not practical or implementable. So I lived with that for a little while, and all of this thing, months has gone by. I'm busy working, doing different things, and but it just continually started to. Then I'm internalizing and then researching and gathering information and understanding how wrong all of this was from a whole bunch of different levels. And so, but I just continued going about my business and thinking that at some point in time, some sort of ice will break and things will change. And then in that same time frame, I went to the district attorney's office of the town where I grew up. Then I asked to speak to the district attorney, and the same kind of experience. If I sad to say, if I would have been anybody off the street, they probably wouldn't have even have listened to me, really. They would have, taken my name and number and, oh, we'll call you back or something like that. But
Yeah.
I said my name, and then the waters parted a little bit. And they got a detective to come out and talk to me. And he took me in the back room and we started talking, and I, started explaining my situation, my story. He's like, "Oh, wow, okay. Well, I'll tell you, we have heard we've heard people say things about it, but we never had any credibility to it at all or anything, which I felt was kind of odd and sad, but it is what it is." Uh, but he said, "Okay." I said, "Look, I'll take you to where this all happened." I said, "I'll show you with your eyeballs, where this all went down." And it was in detail by detail. I will tell my story, which took hours and hours of time talking to him and taking taking notes on everything. And so that process that sparked that was a catalyst. That was a catalyst for people to really pay attention to the point where they said that, hey, we've got a grand jury coming up in a couple of months for something unrelated to this, but we're going to tie this into it and we're going to bring this up because when you're a judicial jurisdiction, you have to have funds available to compensate victims.
Okay.
So their rationale was, hey, if this thing, quote unquote, blows up and we've got a lot of victims of this, we got to make sure we have enough funds in the district attorney treasury to compensate these victims for under the code of law. Because all of my abuse was a long time ago. Statute of limitations in Pennsylvania had expired, both in civil and criminal. There's statute of limitations had way expired for my personal situation and for the situation of most of the victims who were around my time. So all of that said, it went to a grand jury, and my abusers, I testified, as did a couple. In the meantime, a couple other people had surfaced for enough for the paper to get comfortable with running a story, enough for the district attorney's office to call this grand jury. And I was one of the leading testimonies in that trial. And then they called him to the stand too. And under oath, he admitted that he had abused, and I don't want to misquote, but it was something like, I had abused maybe 3 or 4 victims. Oh, okay. So he said that. So he had, but then he went, kind of tried to redact that or tried to cover it up. I don't think he understood the implications of what he was saying at that exact moment in time. But So he took his testimony to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania to get that covered up. That they didn't want the district attorney to release the transcripts of the grand jury trial because his name was clearly in it. And
Right.
the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania ruled that okay, the transcript can go out, but his name will have to be covered up. So he was listed as
Mhm.
John Doe or whatever as a person. But anybody in town uh, who knew, the situation knew exactly who that person was. And so the newspaper ran with the story. The story published, they published everything. And then things started to becoming a lot more visible, a lot more. That's a long-winded answer to your initial question, I think, but that's the basis of a lot of what happened.
Okay. When you came forward with the information, was he still involved or had it been quite a while that he'd been out of being involved?
Yeah, I would say it had been quite a while,
Okay.
years of time. Yeah, it wasn't like he was actively a troop leader or directly involved, but the things his activity in the community and all of the other things he does was just as active.
Mhm.
But he was in failing health at this time. He was living in an assisted care. He was having mobility issues, and so he was living in an assisted care facility at that point in time.
Okay.
But yeah, so
When everything started to come out, how did you feel? And do you feel like, because I know, you're met with people questioning, is this
yeah,
real? Did this really happen?
yeah.
Are remembering this right? How did you handle all of that? And for the other people that came forward, were they anybody that you were close to?
No, there were two other individuals that I didn't know. They were like, I'd say probably 5 or 6 years after my views. So no,
Mhm.
and I moved to California. So no, I didn't know them and we never really met face to face. One of them, we exchanged emails or messages in some way, shape, or
Mhm.
form temporarily, but uh, and my processing of things were, I mean, most people were understanding of I mean, they knew what I was saying was reality. There wasn't like any question of my memory on the topic or anything. Anybody who knows me know that had nothing to gain by, so to speak, of making anything up or fabricating anything. It just it is what it is. Uh, so yeah, that's the process of that was, I, I was credible, right, wrong, good or bad. People said, oh, okay, well, Jeff says this. Well, it
Mhm.
must be true. And it prompted other friends of mine to say their stories anonymously off the record.
Okay.
They said, like,
Okay.
I talked to some of my best friends and I said, look, I said, I don't know how you feel about all of this, but this is the way I feel about it. I'm completely open. Everybody knows it's me. I'm part of the story. I know you were there. Okay. I don't want to say who you are. If you don't want
Mhm.
me to,
Yeah.
that's reality. And some people might do the math on, oh, well, okay, well, if it's somebody close to Jeff, then, oh, it's got to be, ABC or DEF person.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do about that, but I don't have to, say who they are. So but they corroborated what I was saying off the record. I had some people in the media world contact and said, "Look, here's an about don't under any circumstances divulge who this is or whatever," and they
Mhm.
contacted, and so there was an element of that. But from my experience with the people, once the story was on the front page of the newspaper, which it was, obviously it was in the USA Today newspaper in a period of time too. So everybody knew I was completely associated with it, but people were sympathetic to the cause. I mean, I got
Yeah.
messages from people I didn't, hadn't heard of or hadn't expected from saying, "Oh, we support, wow, this is just terrible that this is what has unfolded." And, there was a lot of compassion on my part. That there were just a couple, I just say a couple people who said, "Oh, how could you, say this about somebody who's done so much for the community and
Mhm.
is so great and all those kind of things." I'm like, it is what it is. Nothing I can do about
Yeah.
it.
How did you process, that kind of situation later down the road? Were there ever moments that it came up that, you were overwhelmed, or do you feel like because it was so long ago, you could kind of separate those things?
Uh, yeah, combination of both. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Different. I mean, we're talking decades of time. So, at different times, it affected me more. I mean, the impact it had on me personally as a human being, when I look back, is the sad reality of my affinity to alcohol at that time, because my abuser's pathway to abuse was straight through the bottle of alcohol and
Mm.
the level of intoxication. So, and that started at the get go, like around the age 11 or 12. Uh, so I looked forward to alcohol very vigorously at that age.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, academically, that didn't set well with me. It didn't.
Mhm.
My performance in school was a complete disaster. And coupled with, I have a learning disability that I didn't really realize until I was in my 50s. But I have what's called dyscalculia, which is a numeric version of dyslexia. And so I have a bad problem processing numbers without
Mhm.
really stopping and thinking. And like if you told me your telephone number and you say, "Oh, tell me tell it back to me," I couldn't probably get more than like a couple of numbers right. Uh, so I never realized I had that.
Mhm.
And so that coupled with my alcohol consumption at that age, my academic world was a train wreck, to the tune that I had to go through eighth grade twice. I started early biologically because my mom was in education and she was my preschool teacher and all these said, "Oh, hey, Geof, you could start school right now." Oh,
Mhm.
okay. So off to school I went. So I was a year younger than all my counterparts in school when I started. And then when I got to eighth grade, my grades were so bad. I mean, I was failing things, and my parents sent me through eighth grade twice. And that didn't really help anything, to be honest with you. I just, yeah, it continued on being an academic train wreck.
Mhm.
So I look back over time, and I have at times regret about that, because I see other people that I know and that I relate to, and they're doing different things. And oh, hey, I went to law school, or I went to this, I went to that, and I'm like, oh, geez,
Mhm.
I wish I would have had that opportunity, perhaps. Not that I'm saying I got any great, huge regrets in my life, but I do look back and do the what if on that
Mhm.
process. If that hadn't happened, if I hadn't been like that for 4 or 5 years, what would have been? Uh, and then there's the sexual part of it all plays rolls around too. I mean, those are obviously the two big things: is and the alcohol and the actual abuse itself, and what was going down compared to what is quote unquote normal. That part of it is like, okay, well, uh, maybe my life in different ways would have been different as a result of not being that. But I mean, I'm a kind of person I like to look forward, and
Mhm.
while I do respect and think about the past, I like to put my head down and think more about the future. But yeah, certainly over the decades, and and while growing up, raising my two daughters, I'm sure it's had an impact on the way that I deal with them and the relationship I've had with them, and to some degree the level of freedom and independence that they've had in different points of their term. I just, yeah, and that's the world we live in today is obviously more like that, regardless of what has happened to somebody's background. But I was certainly very protective and
Mhm.
as much as I could be. And
Yeah.
I just respected their space and their privacy and their understanding of things. And my oldest daughter, as started going to college and she's involved in behavioral health for children, counseling, therapists for children. And so she was one of the, when I mean, I told when this was all starting to go down, I had conversations with both my daughters, and they got it and they understood it, and they pushed me to become more open and more public about everything, which
Mhm.
I'm thankful for because a lot of different ways that maybe I might have not been quite as open as I was, but thanks to their encouragement, yeah, that's how things unfolded.
I really like that they were encouraging to you and you were able to
Yeah,
let it. And
yeah,
since then, you've been, I know your business, you are very
yeah,
forward thinking. So you're very much in the
yeah.
tech world. And now you're wanting to write a book and share more of your story. What made you want to write a book? Going from,
Mm,
tech business to
yeah.
writing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just in the interest of helping build awareness and understanding of how prevalent the abuse is and can be, and how swept under the rug that it can be, and that people who have positions of authority and leadership and prominence, whatever you want to call it, are just as susceptible, if not more, to being abusers and predators, pedophiles, all those kinds of things. And I just don't think that's right. I think that we should have an understanding that somebody who is abused should understand that the abuse is taking place and be able to process it in a way and get help and get support from other people.
Mhm.
Because it's one thing to live in a bubble and try and ignore it all, but that doesn't do anybody, doesn't do yourself any good, doesn't help minimize the problems in the future.
Yeah,
So
I hear you.
yeah,
I think that was a big motivator behind me sharing my
yeah,
story. And it's because I think when I hear other people speak, a lot of times if they've gone through something similar, it's like you said, sometimes you don't know that it's not
yeah,
normal until you hear
yeah,
somebody else say it or until you even say it out loud. Because I think a lot of
yeah,
people, regardless of what type of abuse you go through, you don't really share it. And once you start sharing it, that's when you start to realize like, oh, this actually doesn't add up because you can
yeah,
tell based on other people's reactions. But hearing other people's stories has made me feel seen, and it makes me want to tell mine so that other people can,
yeah,
recognize things sooner than later rather than, hindsight's 2020.
yeah,
Once you're
yeah,
older and you look back and you're like, "Oh,
yeah,
wow,
oh,
like
man.
I see
Yeah.
it now, but then I couldn't see it the way that I do now."
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's yeah. So that is part and just documenting my story just for prosperity's sake, so to speak, so
Mhm.
that there is no confusion or, years later, maybe one of my daughters is, might wonder, kind of different things. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll avoid any confusion and just put it in black and white and tell stories about it. So the book that I'm working on is a compilation of stories from all of these four topics that in various ways have been very influential in my life that's gotten me to the age that I am right now. So I don't, my objective with the compilation of the finished product is to be something that uh, is readable and enlightening and just something that is interesting as much as anything, so that somebody could just look through parts of it and read any individual piece of it and say, "Oh, okay, well, oh, wow, that's an interesting story." Uh, and regardless of whether it's from the abuse in the Boy Scout world or whether it's something to do with my experiences with pioneering various technologies and the internet pioneering that I've done over my lifetime, yeah, food and music related kinds of things. I just want to have something that's a compilation of entertaining and potentially enlightening kinds of stories and experience for somebody. I don't. It's not going to be the thing that you need to pick it up and read it from cover to cover to get anything out of it. Because quite candidly, I'm a lot better writer than I am a reader, and I pick up something that quote unquote looks like a book, and I'm like. Kind of intimidating for a minute or two. But do I read the back covers and if I see something interesting and read through it a bit? Yeah, that's the kind of reader that I am. So I'm kind of putting something together that will be potentially received by somebody who doesn't want to read it all cover to cover, but they get something out of seeing pieces of it.
Yeah, I think just who you are as a person alone, is very much, I don't know if motivating is the right word, enlightening. I like
Yeah.
that word because going through something like that and how you mentioned having the substance abuse along with it, and then still being able to, move through the business world, create this life
Yeah.
for yourself, create a safe space for your daughters. I know that isn't always the direction that people go when they go through
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, summarizing that part of it. Yeah. Yeah.
do you feel like you had a lot of support around you? And do you feel like what do you feel like was the biggest difference maker for you in being able to move through that experience rather than letting it, crush you?
Yeah. Well, I think that the positive experiences that I got out of scouting, because scouting was a lot more than just this for me, as is for many people, but for me, personally, the scouting is all of the good things that I'm gonna say 80% of it was very positive. And I was able to do things at a young age that gave me opportunities down the road that I might not have otherwise had.
Mhm.
Uh, and so those positive experiences that I've had in my life through different entities, different organizations have just kept me so busy in positive ways that it offsets the abuse part of things to a certain degree. Like I say, again, it doesn't wash it away, but
Mhm.
it just gives me different framework of thinking and activities and things that I have done in my lifetime. One of the other very formative pieces of my before the age of 18 experiences was I had the opportunity to be an exchange student in Italy when I between my junior and senior year of high school. And that was a very enlightening experience for me personally, to go live in a different culture for a period of time, growing up in this little farm town in South Central Pennsylvania, and running around cities like Milan and Rome, and having all kinds of fun and doing different things. Those positive experiences certainly were helpful in me thinking about the other, the not so positive things.
Mhm.
So all of those. So yeah, I mean, I've been very lucky. I feel very fortunate to have grown up in the family that I did. Okay, could things have been different? Maybe my parents could have been paying more attention to what I was doing, but on the other hand, wouldn't have the same frame of mind that I do now,
Mhm.
and wouldn't have put myself out there and to do other things had I been more protected or more in a bubble as I was growing up. So yeah, so my girlfriend just said this last night. I forget what brought it up, but it was like, yeah, it was something to do with sisters and brothers. We were
Mhm.
watching a show on the whatever it was, and the male person was spoiled by his family, and the sister was on the side, but the male character in this thing was, oh, his father was bending over backwards to protect him and do all this kind of
Mhm.
stuff. My girlfriend's like, oh yeah, that's the way it is. I mean, she grew up in a family with a lot of sisters and a few brothers. The brothers could do no wrong, but the daughters always got the wrath of mom and dad. Oh, you can't not do anything right. And she looked over,
Mhm.
she goes, yeah, that's you. Yeah, you're spoiled. I said, okay, yeah, yeah, guilty as charged. I was spoiled when I was growing up.
Mhm.
Okay. So all of that said, yeah, there are positive things that I have experienced that just move forward. So I'm comfortable enough saying, calling out what was wrong, and saying, look, this is not the way it should be. It's
Mhm.
I'm not going to dwell on it too terribly much, but it's something that still needs to be conscious, and needs to be out in the open rather than swept under a rug.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think a lot of times things like that, especially in these specific circumstances you read, they are swept under the
Yeah,
rug because
yeah,
people, one, they don't want to, these people have this big reputation. They're known. They don't want to ruffle any feathers. They don't, you know, it happened so long ago. We don't want to change the narrative that's been built. But I think it is really important, one, stopping the cycle, stopping these
yeah.
things from continuing to happen, and then also bringing, some light and I don't want to say justice, but maybe
Well,
some closure to the people that did experience it, saying, what you experienced was real and, it's okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. The part of it is because it's a sad reality. I mean, and the justice part of it is, I mean, that's a kind of a lengthy conversation, lengthy, this, another subject for another day kind of thing.
Mhm,
But I've got lots of perspective on that too, because
mhm,
of the statute of limitations passing in Pennsylvania, and states have adopted what are called look back windows, so
mhm,
that statute of limitations is temporarily suspended, and so that uh, victims as adults can now go back and seek justice in some way, a little bit more closure
mhm,
in some way. And so, uh, if boy, I don't know how much you know about the whole Boy Scouts of America situation, but in the midst of my whole thing coming public and all of that process, other Boy Scouts in other parts of the country were becoming public, and uh, the bottom line is, out of a result of all of that, the Boy Scouts of America, in their defenses of being overwhelmed with lawsuits, says, "Hey, we got a problem here. We got a bunch of people that are going to start filing claims because some of them, they weren't past statute limitations. They lived in a state where they had uh, made a little back window, or they were in their situation was so recent that statute limitations was not a factor." And so Boy Scouts looked out the window and said, "Oh boy, we got a problem here." So, make a long story short, they filed for bankruptcy and to an interest to protect their entity, and all these little fiefdoms of Boy Scout troops scattered around the country. They just saw this flood of tidal wave of lawsuits coming their direction. And so that was their defense was, "Oh, we're going to declare bankruptcy." Ooh, okay. So out of that, the bankruptcy court said, "Hey, you've got to process all of these victims, and you've got to compensate them for their abuse. And you're going to have to figure out a way to make this all happen." Well, this is something that really hasn't been done in the United States before. So it's kind of charting uncharted waters to a certain degree, but some things are, letter of the law prevails. But make a long story short, they said, "Hey, victims, you have a window to file a claim for your abuse situation." And when they did that, they said, 6 months or something like that. At the end of 6 months, they had 80,000 claims. Wow. And that was just like, whoa, yeah, like, wow, like, whoa, where did that come from? But you do the calculus and you do the math, and you can see how over the last 50 years that it could be an accurate number. It could be, I'm not could be, I'm sure it's bigger, because some people even didn't want to file a claim for whatever reason. But to say that there were at least 80,000 human beings in the United States of America that were abused in the circumstances that pertain to Boy Scouts and scouting, it's like, oh, that's a number. So I've been in the midst of all of that. I have claimed, I have that are part of the claimant of the suit, and the legal part of seeking justice it's a clusterfuck, to be quite honest with you.
I can imagine.
It's like they can say, "Oh, we're all about the victim's compassion and all that kind of stuff," but the reality is, it's just everybody's just covering their asses, kind of thing. That's all that's going down, at least from my perspective. So that's so as adults, because I think most people, for whatever reason, like myself, I say, people ask her, "Well, why did you wait so long?" And we all got reasons why we wait. For me, my daughters, the fact that my parents were best of friends with my victims and victims' family. There's all kinds of reasons why people don't, the minute after something bad happens to them, run to the law enforcement, run to media, run to wherever. That just isn't what happens. Hey, for a whole host of different reasons. They don't even understand that what was going on was not right.
Yeah.
So all of those reasons, it's very understandable that, we live in a world where, you could be, it's been my 50 years old before I could go public and say something about my abuse. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. Just because it happened a long time ago doesn't mean it's not important, that it didn't happen. Wow. That other people, both before and above and below me in terms of age, weren't abused in some way, shape, or form, or that it could still be happening in some way, shape, or form. So it is where our justice system is not set up appropriately in general. And from my perspective, I think I think there should be change in that regards. And that's a big, that's a big ask. That's a big project, so to speak. But
Mhm.
it is for when I see things. I mean, you see it today on national level, people saying, "Oh, okay, hey, look, this happened. XYZ person was doing ABC, and oh, that was 10 years ago. That was 20 years ago. Well, how can you, you know, how can you be so sure, or how can you, that's a sad reality. I mean, when I see that, that's that motivates me to be more active and more involved.
Yeah. It's interesting too because I know a lot of times they'll say victims don't want to come forward, especially in like a legal situation, because they
Yeah.
feel having to take the stand and speak about what happened in front of the person that
Yeah.
did it can be
Yeah.
re-traumatizing, which makes
Yeah.
sense because, you know, on a neurological, psychological level,
Yeah.
your brain doesn't know the difference. So it's releasing those same kind of chemical reactions
Yeah.
when you're reliving it. And I can
Yeah.
imagine if you're doing that, saying it in front of the person who did it can
Yeah.
be terrifying.
Yeah. 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 And I can see that too. I mean, I've experienced it, and I could see how other people might process it a lot
Mhm,
more worse than I did.
mhm,
One of the things that really motivated me and gave me a shot in the arm in the midst of all of this sad reality is I had heard from somebody that about, let's say, probably about 10 years after my abuse, there was a scout who ended up committing suicide. And he was part of the troop. And, you can't say anything definitively or not, but it's not out of the realm of reality or possibility that his abuse could have directly contributed to that situation. And
absolutely.
when I heard that, I was like, man, because I think, well, okay, what if you were, roll back the hands of time and do the hindsight thing? Let's say I would have, yeah, very soon after my abuse, reported it and stopped it, then there's another person that would be with us today, and wouldn't have experienced the trauma. So I have a regret that in ways that I didn't come forward. I didn't have the wisdom and insight as
Mhm,
a youth, as an adolescent to be able to call out what was going on to me. So that part of things is, yeah, but the different people process things differently. And
yeah.
I can certainly understand stories that I've heard that where people's lives were dramatically impacted in a lot of different
Mhm,
ways, not a lot of them not so good. That that makes me feel guilty inside. I'm like,
mhm,
I wish I would have, had I known that, obviously I would have said something in the interest of that.
mhm.
But since I didn't know, what can I do about it now? Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's yeah, people's processing of it over time is a thing. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's so many factors that come into play. And I think guilt and shame is something that a lot of people don't talk about that comes with, being a part of something like that. There just is a level of guilt and shame no matter how you
Yeah.
process it, how you dealt with it. You're always going to feel like maybe I could have
Mhm.
done something differently. And then, especially when it happens when you're so young, you kind of have to like remind yourself, hey, I was just a child. I
Yeah.
was such a young kid. Of course I didn't know, um,
Yeah.
what the right or wrong thing would have been. And that's also up to, you know, speculation and perspective as well,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
would have been the right thing.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that and motivated me or just was an awakening to me was at the church that sponsored my troop, which was a big deal. I mean, that my church, right, wrong, good or bad, is a quote unquote a big deal in my town. It was it was the first building that was built in the town when the founder of the town came in the early 1700s or whatever and said, "Hey, I'm going to build a town here." Oh, okay. And the first building he built was the church. And that's the church that I'm involved with and that my troop was involved with. And it has a lot of history, has a lot of legacy and all these kinds of things. But they have, when you walk down this one hall in the activities center of the church, and they got all the Troop 127 memorabilia and the picture of the troop every year from like 1960s through, modern day. And when I looked at the picture of the first year that I was in scouting, my first year in Boy Scouts, and I look at my picture, look at me standing there. And I'm like, oh my God, that's how old I was when this all was going down. It really sunk in
Mhm.
just in a physical way of how, wow, that's right. And now when I see kids that look like that age now, walking down the street, riding their bikes or on their way to school, and I think, wow, that's when it all started and that's when it all went happened. I'm like, whoa. I mean, I guess in my mind, I thought I was older than what I was. Maybe
Mhm.
that's had something to do with it. Because, and physically, as I aged, I always looked older than what I was. I mean, when I
Mhm.
was 12, 13 years old, I could walk into a bar and get a bartender to sell me a 6-pack of beer to go without an ID or anything.
Mhm.
And so I've always, in my younger years, I always looked older than what I was. And maybe in my mind, I thought I was older than what I was. But when I saw that picture and me standing with all the troop and for the first year, I was like, oh, just a little kid, for heaven's sakes. Uh, so yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it is, that kind of thing for sure. You just, yeah,
Yeah, what a perspective shift to see it from that
yeah,
point of view. And I get
yeah,
that too, where you see the younger kids and you're like, and it probably made you grow up quicker, which is part of
yeah,
why you felt older because
yeah.
in your mind, you're dealing with things that kids can't process and your mind is having to process these things that are happening, whether,
Yeah,
it fully understood what was going on or not. It changes the way that your brain develops and
yeah, there wasn't one of the enticements. I mean, from my situation was, okay, here's town, and then outside of town, about 30 miles out in the wilderness, is this little recreational area that people from my church had built, and you could belong to that association that owned all of this property, and you could have a spot to build a cabin on or have a little weekend getaway kind of place. That's where my abuse took place. My abuser's father and him built this fairly nice structure on a piece of property in this association, if you will, that was beautiful. I mean, literally, you could take anybody from anywhere there and helicopter them in and drop them in there and say, wow, look at this space. And you'd be like, whoa, where am I? It's like
Mhm.
Nirvana kind of thing. Uh, but so he had this beautiful cabin in this beautiful setting that was off the grid before off the grid was even a word. I mean, there was one rotary dial phone that you could pick up and you could get somebody to the outside world. But other than that, there was really nothing but wilderness. And that's where the abuse took place. I mean, he would take three or four, two or three, whatever the number would be, up there for the weekend. Come pick
Mhm.
you up on Friday. Oh, hey, mom, I'm going up to Horse Valley for the weekend. Oh, okay. Oh, great. Have fun. We'll see you on Sunday. Okay. So hop in the car and up the 30, 40-minute drive to get to Horse Valley. And then as soon as we get inside the door of the cabin, well, we'd be opening up bottles of vodka and drinking them, pulling in cases of beer and starting to drink. And that's how it all unfolded. And by the end of the night, we grill some steaks on the grill, and then the end of the night comes, the evening comes along, and more drinking and more stuff, and then out comes pornography, which was like, whoa! I mean, when I was a kid, a little magazine, Playboy magazines, Penthouse magazines, these were things like, whoa, hey, wow, this is like a treat. We didn't have, the internet back in those
Yeah.
days. Uh, so that was like, whoa. And then one thing leads to another. Then he had a sauna on this property. And that was part of the weekend ritual was, fire up. It was a wood fired sauna. So you'd have to go in or as soon as you get up there, you start the fire going. So that the sauna room is nice and warm. And then we all get in the sauna and, completely undressed and start doing things that we shouldn't be doing. Uh, and that was all part of the process. But to start with, as we get up there at times, and the abuser had a very nice car. He had a brand new Mercedes. And we get like halfway up to the mountains, and he pull over and say, "Oh, who wants to drive the Mercedes?" I'm like 13 years old. I'm like, "Oh, hey, I'm behind the wheel of a Mercedes Benz." Uh, I mean, just the perspective of what what is right or wrong or how we learn things sooner. It was like there's a case in point that okay, I learned how to drive a car. I mean, that other people do under different circumstances, of course. Maybe I grew up on a farm and or whatever, and not to say I would have never driven a car before age 16 otherwise, but it was a gateway, a facilitator to this experience of like, oh wow, I'm lucky. I'm like privileged to be in this situation. And that's part of the processing of it all is like, okay, yeah, I did grow up faster in some ways than other people might have, or and in the similar kind of peer group that I was in.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that plays a really big piece of it. I think you touched on something really important is like, I know they use the term grooming is one
yeah,
thing.
there you go.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
very
that's
manipulative where even though
yeah.
these bad things are happening, it's coupled with these like
Oh
really
yeah,
great
real.
things.
Whoa,
So
yeah,
you're like, it's
yeah.
very confusing that these
Yeah.
things are happening in conjunction with each other, which I think
Yeah.
makes it even harder to process and even harder to talk about because you're like, there are aspects of this
Oh,
I
yeah.
enjoy.
Yeah. 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 There are. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that line is just riddled with that. I mean, that
Mhm.
really is the underlying theme of it all. And it would apply to any of the, yeah, however many victims there are, would say the same words. It was like, oh, wow. How was I so lucky to be able to go? I mean, we took a sailing trip down in the Florida Keys and, we went camping all over the East Coast and canoeing trips here and doing this and having trail bikes and riding around and all kinds of different things that were like, wow. I mean, I just feel honored and privileged in parts of that s- situation. And then you think, oh my God, well, that was all at the expense of this all for the pleasuring of this other individual
Mhm.
who, who shouldn't have been doing what he was doing. And you could say, oh, well, that was back in the old days. Okay, well, I know that stuff still happens today. I mean,
Yeah, it does.
that's the reality. It does. You could say, oh, the different times back then and different things, but the equivalent of it is still happening today. Young child, young adult, and being victimized by somebody who is grooming them and has given them a wrong perspective on a lot of different things.
Mhm.
That's a sad reality. Yeah, that's really at the core of a lot of it. Is
Yeah.
that grooming process for victims of child abuse. And then not to say as an adult, I've seen abuse as adult on adult is no more right or wrong, but
Right.
from the child's standpoint of, it really sinks in that, you know, in having sexual contact with any human being that is under the age of 18 is rape.
Yeah.
In all 50 states, that's the case.
Mhm.
It's a very cut and dry thing, but I didn't know that or have any understanding of that till I was well into my 30s, 40 years old, that that was
Yeah.
actually the case.
Mhm.
Uh, and there's reason why, because at that age, your perspective is just completely different, and your development is biologically and physically different. So yeah, there's reasons for that.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's the perspective that you have of like you're getting all of these things at an early age, and oh wow, aren't you lucky? Yeah, okay, I was lucky in some ways, but in other ways, not so much. Especially when I factor in the alcohol piece of things, and that one I can I can see it's not so gray. It's not. It's so
Yeah.
clearly black and white to
Mhm.
feed alcohol to a child,
Yeah.
regardless of whether you're going to sexually abuse them or not, it's just
Mhm.
wrong. It is just wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Uh, that
I
is,
hear you on
yeah,
that.
yeah,
It's
that's,
interesting because, I come from a really small town too, and
yeah,
I was given alcohol by adults when I was very
yeah,
young as well, and
yeah.
it's kind of like you said, I see my son now and it's like, gosh, it's
Ooh,
like around his
oh,
age that, I had
uh,
access to that stuff, and that's so crazy to me because I can't imagine it for my own child.
yeah. I mean, my oldest daughter's 33, my youngest is 30, and still, when we're around alcohol, I get nervous when we're in a
Mhm.
setting where their access to alcohol. Like just 2 weekends ago, I was in Pittsburgh, and my youngest daughter was part of the this wedding that we were involved in, and she's out drinking, having a good time. I mean, I can't. I'm just like biting. I said, well, she's 30 years old. For heaven's sakes, I got to ease up,
Uh-huh.
let her have her fun. But yeah, when they were kids, yeah, it was like, whoa, don't get near that. Uh, but yeah, it is, yeah, you can, as adults, it's, you got to be protective.
Mhm.
And, yeah, you can't, be pouring it down the throats and, having access to that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was a problem. Yeah, that was, for me, that was a big problem.
Yeah.
But, and I can see how other people, it's even a bigger problem. I mean, I thankfully, as an adult, young adult, I kind of woke up and started smelling the roses to a certain degree and saying, look, if I continue this, I'm going to be in a body bag. That was
Yeah.
it. When I moved to California, I drove a car in the middle of January to get away from a snowstorm that was coming into South Central, into the whole Mid Atlantic. There's
Mhm.
things called nor'easters where the weather just is completely. Well, there was a big nor'easter storm coming, uh, and that was the impetus for me to say, I don't know why I live here, and when there's a whole other parts of the world, all parts of the country where it's sunny and warm all the time. So I
Mhm.
said to myself, I'm going to move to California. So a couple of weeks later, I got in my little Volkswagen and I started driving to California without any idea. I'd never been west of the Mississippi River at that point in time. Uh, and so I just got in my car and started driving. But I went south as quickly as I could. So I went like
Mhm.
straight down and went across the bottom on Highway 8 and got into New Orleans was like the first major stop I had. And New Orleans to me was like, whoa, it was like, adult Disney World. It had everything that I loved. It had music, it had food, it had alcohol. And I was like, I thought I hadn't gone to heaven. Uh, and I'd spent like 2 or 3 nights there and I just was like, I hadn't hardly slept at all. And then at like, I forget, it was like around like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. I was in this one club and they were dancing up a storm and some kind of DJ was playing or something. But they threw the lights on and stopped all the music and everything. They said, "Hey, we got to clean up. We got to take a break for like an hour."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I was all upset about it. I was like freaking out. I was like, "Oh, you can't pull what they do. You can't stop. Pull the plug on all of this right now. It's for heaven's sakes. It's only 5 o'clock in the morning." Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then it dawned on me. I said, "Oh my God, this is no way. I have no way to live a life." I said, "If I don't get out of here like tomorrow morning, I'm going to end up in a body bag." There's no other way to describe it. I was just like on that band, maybe not the next day, not the next week, but at some point in time, I'm going to be carted out of somewhere in a body bag if I don't get out of this lifestyle and this environment. And so thankfully hopped in the car and continued on my way to California. But it is, there are cycles that are hard to break. And I get it when I see and around people that haven't had the ability to break that cycle and get out of it. It's heart-wrenching at times to see people that are in situations that I know they can't control. They can't control.
Mm-hmm.
I could see how somebody, oh well, if only they would do this or if only they would do that, they would be model citizens or whatever. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that easy. It
Right.
really isn't that easy. And you have to have empathy in those situations and
Mm-hmm.
not take advantage of them, which is the
Yeah.
same reality. You know, those people are being taken advantage of in all kinds of different ways. And
Yeah.
that's a sad reality that their mental presence is giving them the ability to be physical victims.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Those cycles
unfortunate.
can be incredibly
Yeah,
tough.
yeah, yeah, that's for sure. So,
So now that
okay.
you're where you are,
Yeah,
and I know you are working on building an organization to help people tell their
yeah,
stories and stop these cycles of abuse. Can you tell
yeah.
me a little bit around what inspired that?
Yeah, well, that was a series of serendipitous kinds of introductions and uh, uh, communications that just sparked uh, a fire inside of me about that topic. Uh, Specifically getting introduced to you, getting introduced to Emily Gray, and having, I mean, it was just in that immediate time frame that I saw synergy between you and Emily, and it just sparked like, oh, these two people need to know one another for whatever reason. It just was like this epiphany of introduction. I mean, I introduce a lot of people to a lot of other people, but I thought, okay, here's two people that would certainly benefit, I think, from knowing one another.
Mhm.
And that was the catalyst. And then just in the immediate time around that, and where I'm at with getting my story out there, getting it told, and just knowing what I know about the publishing business of getting books and messages out there. I know and understand it. It's one thing to write a book and get a book published and have it printed, or maybe it's on audio book, on whatever format of things that it is, to get eyeballs and ears to pay attention to it. Well, that's where the rubber hits the road. And
Mhm.
I know that in that world, you have to self promote yourself. You have to get your message. You have to, be your own a drummer and get your music out there. Uh, and I know the world is not set up to do that easily. I mean, yes, we have the
Sure.
internet, we have all these different forms of media, and yes, you can things, but at the reality, it starts in a one-on-one kind of way, at least from my experience and perspective. So
Mhm.
I think always think, two minds are better than one, three minds are even better than two, and there's always good things that come out of collaboration and talking to people and those kinds of things. So that's what that was part of the catalyst of it all. Then I start thinking about activities and things that could take place, communications that could take place like this to get messages out to more people in more different ways. And I don't see, maybe they're out there and I just aren't aware of them, but I don't see too many affinity groups that are very visible and very public, that are victims of abuse, and no matter what kind of abuse it is, no matter what age factor or what age the people were in at the time or whatever. I just don't see a lot of that out there, if any at all.
Mhm.
So I thought, why not work together and get other people to get involved and support people who were, willing to take their story and go public with it, whether it's in the form of a book or speaking on a podcast or communicating in some kind of group venue of some sort. So, which you have to have a platform. So I guess
Mhm.
at the bottom of the end of the day, it's all about building a platform for people to use to take it where they want to go with it, kind of thing. So that's what cattle. It wasn't anything I sat down and engineered in my mind for months on end or anything like that. It was just
Mhm.
one of these spontaneous catalyst kind of things that I know through my lifetime in all kinds of different ways. I know many times those are the best things. They have the best results at the end of the
Mhm.
day. You can plan and overthink and you have a drawing board of all these different, and man, 9 times out of 10, nothing goes the way you think it's going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing good go
Mhm.
to think you're gonna. So to me, it's like, okay, let's get this together, make the platform, give the venues for participation, and see. And I just in my communication with people who knew nothing about it and introducing them to the idea, the level of encouragement and enthusiasm for, oh, yeah, oh, I would like to be a part of that. Yeah, oh,
Mhm.
Geof, that's a good idea. I've heard that's a good idea way more than I have heard. I don't even think I've heard anybody say that, well, that's like a bad idea. It's just like,
Yeah.
okay, well, maybe I wouldn't be the right person. Or maybe I won't. Okay, I wish you well and all that kind of stuff, but those have been a vast minority compared to the people who say, "Oh, wow, yeah, keep me in the loop. I'd like to know more about it."
Yeah.
I support you. I support your efforts, and I would like to know more about it as time goes on. And it doesn't have to be somebody who's a victim of abuse themselves, just somebody who understands that abuse takes place and that's not a good thing. And if they can do something to minimize it and stop it, that they're willing to at least pay attention and support it how they can.
Yeah, I think there is a big need for it. I think you saw that need. And it's
Yeah.
like you said, even for the people who have gotten their stories out, I think one, there's a huge lack of support at that level.
Yeah.
There's lots of support for people who are actively in it, actively
Yeah.
coming out of it. But when you're years down the road and you're speaking
Yeah.
about there isn't really anywhere you can go. And
Yeah.
it can sometimes be a very life altering moment to actually share that kind of thing. And I have people all the time come to me and say, I want to tell my story, but I have no idea how. I don't
Uh,
know where to
don't have.
start. I
Yeah.
don't know
Don't
what to
have.
do.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that's to give somebody at least a roadmap of our point of reference of how what they could possibly do. I think. Yeah. I think there are people who exactly as you described. They want to do something, but they don't know what to do and how to do it. So
Hmm.
maybe this organization, this community of people will give at least a few people those vocal cords to get their story out and give them the legs to be part of the solution. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's going to be people that are the solution. It's not going to magically wake up and, oh, we live in this world where, oh, nobody thinks they should abuse somebody else. It
Mhm.
isn't going to happen by itself. That's for sure. Yeah.
Right.
That's for
And I
sure.
think everybody's story has something unique about it. And I tell people that all the time. I was like, I don't care how
Yeah.
cliche or whatever you think
Yeah.
what you went
Yeah.
through is, the
Yeah.
way that you say something is going to be heard differently. Like somebody needs to hear it from your voice. Somebody needs to hear it
Yeah.
from your perspective. And I think everybody, should
Yeah. Yeah. Their
have the
versions.
the
Yeah.
platform, yes, to
Yeah.
share what they want to share.
Yeah, yeah, their version should be there's no judging in any of this. There's no like,
Mhm.
oh, I wasn't abused bad enough, or my abuse was, oh gosh, so terrible. The degrees of abuse, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when it happened, who the perpetrator was, how minor it might have felt, how major it might have felt. All those things, they don't matter. Abuse is abuse. Taking somebody in authority, taking control in some way, shape, or form in an interest that is detrimental to the other human being, that's abuse. I mean, plain and
Yeah.
simple. And whether it happened one day or over the course of years, like in my situation, it doesn't matter. It's
Mhm.
abuse is abuse. We need to work to end abuse.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. That's really what it boils down to.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to my podcast. Remember, loves, your best is always enough. Thank you for sharing this space with me today. Until next time.